Picture this. A 22,000-hectare farm that's fed Australian families for generations just got sold off during a 6-week parliamentary holiday. Nobody in Tasmania found out until it was basically done and dusted, and the guy who signed off on it is the Treasurer of Australia. Coincidence? Timing? Or just really unfortunate scheduling? Stick around, because today we are diving into the Rushy Lagoon saga, and trust me, this one has farmers, politicians, and even Pauline Hanson all fired up for very different reasons. Welcome back to Australian Dish, where we serve up Australian politics hot, fresh, and without the boring bits. Let's get into it. So here's the setup. Rushy Lagoon is Tasmania's biggest farm. 22,000 hectares in the state's northeast, owned by New Zealand's Pye family, and for decades it's been a serious dairy and beef operation. Think of it as the Tasmanian equivalent of a family business that's been quietly running the show since before most of us were born. Except now, that business has a new owner, and it's not a local farmer looking to expand the herd. The buyer is the Tasmanian Natural Asset Trust, managed by the UK's Gresham House, and the plan isn't more cows, it's carbon. The idea is to blend commercial softwood plantations with large-scale conservation, ecological restoration, and some sustainable grazing on the side. In plain English, less dairy paddock, more tree planting for carbon credits. It's a more than $100 million deal, and it needed sign-off from Treasurer Jim Chalmers and the Foreign Investment Review Board, known as FIRB, which is basically Australia's bouncer for big foreign purchases. Now here's where it gets spicy. This approval didn't happen in a press conference with cameras rolling. It happened quietly, during Parliament's winter recess, after the decision had reportedly been delayed through FIRB no fewer than 7 times. 7 delays, then radio silence, then approval drops the moment MPs are off enjoying their 6-week break. If you're thinking that sounds like someone waiting for the room to clear before making an announcement, you're not the only one. Let's bring in the reaction, because this is where the story really cooks. TasFarmers President Nathan Cox didn't hold back, calling the timing sneaky and the outcome disgraceful for both Tasmania and national food security. He pointed out that Rushy Lagoon has fed Australian families for generations, and that a community survey found 99% of respondents opposed the sale. 99%. That's the kind of consensus you usually only get when everyone agrees the office coffee machine is broken. Cox also said TasFarmers reached out to Chalmers repeatedly during the process, and got what he described as meaningless responses. His argument, essentially, is that Tasmanian farmers deserved a transparent conversation, not a decision that snuck out the back door while Parliament was on holiday. But before you grab your pitchfork, let's hear the other side, because that's what we do here at Australian Dish. We don't just pick a team and start cheering. Treasurer Jim Chalmers has firmly rejected the sneaky label. He says the decision followed a rigorous process and extensive consultation, weighing up economic, environmental, and other national interest factors. He's also pointed out this call is entirely consistent with FIRB's own advice that the sale isn't contrary to the national interest. And on the jobs front, Chalmers says the project is expected to create more than 190 jobs. He also noted that Rushy Lagoon was already winding down its dairy operations, that the sale went through an extensive public process, and that the Tasmanian government itself classifies the land as marginal agricultural land. So according to Chalmers, this wasn't some thriving dairy empire getting quietly dismantled, it was land already heading in a different direction anyway. Here's a transition for you, because just when you think this story is a two-sided farmer versus federal government showdown, in walks a plot twist involving taxpayer money. Turns out, before Chalmers and FIRB had even approved the sale, the federal government had already earmarked $69 million in taxpayer financing for this exact project. That funding came through the government-owned Clean Energy Finance Corporation, which described Rushy Lagoon as the cornerstone of a project set to create local jobs, inject capital into the regional economy, generate high-integrity carbon credit units, and protect an important wetland. Sounds great on paper, but critics are asking a fairly reasonable question. If the sale hadn't even been approved yet, why was public money already committed to it? It's a bit like paying a deposit on a house before you've actually been approved for the mortgage. Tasmania's Acting Premier Bridget Archer weighed in here too, and her comments were less about outrage and more about process. She said locals were questioning why federal support and investment landed before FIRB's decision was even made, and she summed it up with a line that's honestly very quotable, saying backing a project and then deciding afterward whether it's fair doesn't pass the pub test. Archer was careful to acknowledge the value of investment in regional Tasmania, but said there are serious concerns about how this whole process played out. That's about as diplomatically pointed as Australian politics gets. And then, because no controversial rural land story is complete without her, One Nation leader Pauline Hanson entered the chat. She argued that Labor's focus on net zero is putting Australia's food security at risk, and raised concerns about what converting productive farmland into carbon credit projects means for grocery prices, specifically asking how this might affect the cost of cheese and milk. Whether or not you agree with her framing, it does tap into something a lot of Australians are thinking about right now, which is the tension between environmental goals and keeping food affordable during a cost of living squeeze. So where does that leave us? On one side, you've got a treasurer saying this was a difficult but properly processed decision that respects community concerns while meeting national interest tests. On the other, you've got farming groups, a state acting premier, and a minor party leader all raising the same core question, just from different angles. Was this handled with enough transparency? And should public money have been on the table before the deal was even locked in? What's genuinely interesting here isn't just who's right. It's what this story represents. It's a preview of a bigger conversation Australia is going to keep having: productive agricultural land versus carbon credit and conservation projects, foreign investment versus local ownership, and government transparency versus efficient decision-making. Rushy Lagoon might just be one farm in Tasmania, but the questions it's raising are going to keep popping up across the country. So here's what we want to know from you. Do you think this was a legitimate, properly processed national interest decision? Or should approvals like this never happen while Parliament is on a break? Drop your take in the comments. We read every single one. And if you want more sharp, fast, no-nonsense breakdowns of what's actually happening in Australian politics, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This is Australian Dish. We'll catch you in the next video.